Hey guys, Patrick Wind here, and if you want to learn how to use the top 3 CBO audiences according to the Facebook headquarters so that you can boost your own campaign performance, then stay tuned. And here we are again, directly in our CBO campaign, trying to find the right audiences according to the Facebook headquarters when it comes to campaign budget optimization. So within a CBO campaign budget optimization campaign, the Facebook headquarters actually recommends us to nowadays work with rather broad audiences. Okay, so if we're in Spain, for example, working with 28 million is probably a little bit too much because that's the entire Facebook population within this country. But audiences of up to 2 million work pretty nice when it comes to Spain. So for example, take a look at the potential reach here. If we narrow it down just demographically, for example, to whatever, like these 2 years, something like 1.3 million turns out to work pretty well. And it could be even broader, like up to 2 million, as we said, so 1.8 million. That's something that tends to perform pretty well here in Spain. Of course, this depends heavily on the budget that you set. So take a look at the budget we've set here. We have agreed on that we need at least 10 euros daily budget for each ad set that we're going to put in this campaign. And we also said that it's a good idea to test between 3 and 6 different audiences in one specific campaign. So imagine that we are running 6 different audiences, therefore 6 different ad sets. Therefore it's a good idea to have at least this 60 euro daily budget here on campaign level. And then we can, of course, consider how much a conversion is going to cost us, but let's assume a conversion that we're going to generate the sufficient amount of conversions, which is 50 conversions per week. Let's imagine that we're going to generate that. Then an audience of 1.8 million, for example, in Spain is it's a pretty good idea. What should we do now when we work in a much bigger market, like for example, the United States? Here, an audience of 1.8 million is already super narrow. Okay, if we maintain absolutely the same, take a look at the same demographic filters, so in this case just the age range, our audience is almost 10 times bigger than it used to be in Spain. Therefore, what we can do in these bigger countries, we can expand our potential reach to something like around 4 million. Okay, so if you take a look at, for example, just of course that's not an ideal segmentation here. It's just to show you how this potential reach tool works here on the top. And for example, with 3.9 million in the United States, that would be a proper audience size in order to make your CBO campaigns work. But what if you don't run campaigns neither just in Spain nor just in the United States, but you rather target different countries in Europe? Let's imagine that you target Spain, but also Germany. And when we target Germany, we always want to include my favorite Austrians, of course. Then let's say we also take Italy and France. Okay. Let's see if we make it super wide, so both genders and full age range. What's the full Facebook population that we have? 140 million. Let's take out Italy, for example. Okay, nice. So that basically gives us half of the Facebook population from the United States. In the United States, we had 230 million potential reach. Here in these countries, if you have everything completely open, it's around 110 million, which is of course much too broad. But I'm just saying that when we're working with a potential full reach of something like that, we could easily go up to 4 million again. So we can apply our filters now and try to be somewhere around 4 million. So if you take that, let's make it, so 3.4, that's a good audience size when you work with bigger markets, like for example, the key markets in the European Union. But what if you now want to target only people with high purchasing power, right? So imagine that you're selling high ticket products or services for more than 1,000 euros and you only want to, or luxury items, and you only want to target people who have high purchasing power. Well, what you could do in the US is pretty straightforward. In the US, you could filter here for demographics, financial, income, and you could literally filter to impact only the people that live in the 5% of the zip codes of the United States with the highest average household income. Okay, so therefore you could really impact only people with a lot of money, so to say. And this is unfortunately only available in the United States, but it also doesn't matter too much, because if we understand how Facebook does it, we can easily apply it to all the other countries as well. So do they really know exactly how much each user earns or has in his bank account? No, of course not. The only thing they know about the users is where do they live, okay? And if they live in a postal code, which typically has a high purchase power, then they include you in this 5, 10, or even 25% of the richest, so to say, zip codes or postal codes in the United States. But this thinking we can easily apply also to our own countries. Let's imagine we want to target only the rich people in Spain. Okay, what can we do? For example, if we generate leads for real estate and if we want to sell very expensive houses, then we could easily take, okay, I mean the 18 to 20 year olds would be probably a little bit tricky when you really want to impact the high household incomes. But let's imagine we take the same thinking that we have seen from this filter here. So they only take the educational, that they only take people from high household income postal codes. Well, we could do absolutely the same with these pins, right? I mean, we know if you're in Spain that people who live in Barcelona, and especially if they live in a specific area, tend to have a rather high income. So we can go, for example, to the rich neighborhoods here, which is somewhere let's go a little bit deeper inside. Let's go a little bit deeper inside into Barcelona. Exactly, so like Pedralbes, San Gervasio, like this area here, that's where the rich people live in Barcelona, and you can easily drop a pin there. You can then reduce the radius. And you see, you would only impact these people here. But if we also want to impact people over there, because we know that the guys who live over there, guys and girls obviously that live over there, also have high income, then you can include both cycles. And if you then say, okay, but people who live really here, it's called Orta, don't have such a high purchasing power, then you can easily also exclude them. So you can set another pin and just exclude the other pin, for example, like this. And you can even go a little bit more detailed. You can drop another one here and say, okay, also people who live over there, I don't want them in my audience because they're not gonna buy my expensive property, for example. So which one is it? This one? No, this one. Exactly. You see the one when it lights up. Okay, therefore we want to exclude this one. You see, and then we would only, you could now also exclude even further, but this gives you the possibility to really impact only people in the very high income neighborhoods, which typically is a very good indicator for their purchasing power. Therefore, also the Facebook headquarters recommends, if you really want to impact these people, either work directly with this filter here in the United States, or if you want to work outside the US with this kind of segmentation, then you could easily do it with these pins. However, what should we do if we now run campaigns on a very global scale, right? So imagine that we did our several countries together, like Spain and Italy and Austria and everything together. Well, then it's a very detailed and long repetitive task. If we now have to set the pins everywhere and do really have to go only in these specific cities. So what we can do, which makes your life easier, imagine that you also include Germany, because then it's also a broader size. We said also France. Now, instead of dropping the pin all the time, there's also another way to filter only people who live in the cities, which is rather new, and it's very helpful. So you could say in Germany, I only want, for example, people who live in cities. So only include cities, so not all the rural areas in Germany, but only people who live in specific cities. And here in Spain, you could of course do the same. And you could also go one step further and say, how is city defined, right? So is a city a little village that has a little bit more than 100,000 people, or you can go all the way up to 500,000. So in Spain, you would only stay with 8 of these cities. And if you go all the way up to over 1 million, you would only have 3 cities. And you can also see which are they. So Madrid, Barcelona, and Asturias. Okay. And if you go a little bit lower, you would also include Valencia and Tenerife. So that's the way these filters work, which is a cool idea. And if we now combine all of this know-how, we finally are able to create one of the most successful audience settings that I've seen over the past months, which is honestly a big surprise for many of you, but worldwide targeting, okay? Especially if you sell products that don't face any physical borders. So if you're in the e-commerce industry and you sell small packages, small parcels, or if you sell online courses, if you sell info products, if you sell digital products, if you sell anything that can easily be shipped worldwide, that is going to be a game changer for you, honestly. So applying the full potential reach of the Facebook family of apps of over 2 billion people, okay, and then just filtering now for the right ones within these 2 billion works amazingly well today, okay? So worldwide targeting, of course, within worldwide targeting, you face the problem that there are several areas with low purchasing power, okay? Now, what can you do in order to increase the likelihood that people are actually going to purchase your product because they can afford it? Well, for example, you can filter only for cities. So only include cities. You could do that easily. Like here, for example, you see out of 2.1 billion, we already lowered it down to half. And we could also say only really big cities, like for example, Barcelona, Madrid, and Vienna. And we stay with 810 million, which is still a lot. And we all know that also in cities, you have people that do not have very high purchasing power. So we can apply additional filters. One of the filters that I see as a very good indicator if people have more or less high purchasing power or not is their education. So you can say education level, and you only take people who have a certain level of education. So doctors, people with a master's degree, and of course you can also go down a little bit and say people who are still at university, people college grads, so at least they have some kind of formation, okay? Unspecified is probably not ideal, but with these kind of filters for the education level, we narrowed it down to 240 million, okay? And another hack that is very, very useful if you really only want to reach people with high purchasing power, and especially when you want to work with worldwide targeting, where you're in Africa, in South America, in Asia, and countries where typically the purchasing power on average is not that high. A very good hint, a very good hack that you could apply, which is not to be found on the audience part, but it's another filter rather to be applied on placement part, okay? Here you have to change from automated to manual placement, so edit placement, and all the way down you want to select specific mobile devices and operating systems, and what you want to do is you want to select iOS devices only, okay? That's a really good one, and you want to select, you see, that really narrowed it down, and you want to take only people who use, for example, the iOS version, the operating system, the minimum 8, maximum none, okay? You can also filter only for people who have their Wi-Fi connection activated when they access on the phone, which is a good idea if you sell very high ticket products, because typically you wouldn't buy a 1,000 euro course or a watch. You wouldn't buy that when you're in the metro, but rather at home. Okay, then it's a good idea. If not, if you just generate leads, you can really unselect it, because people nowadays leave their contact information also in the metro when they're walking on the street. But applying these iOS device only will really help you to only focus on people who access Facebook and Instagram from an iPhone, okay, iPhone, iPad, or iPod, okay. So these are all good hints and tricks in order to make sure that you reach the right people that can actually afford your products or services. And now coming back to the official recommendation of the Facebook headquarters when it comes to what kind of audience should we really use inside a CBO campaign in order to make sure that we test everything properly and that we really get the best results from our spend. So what they recommend is that we work always at least with 3 different audiences, okay? 3 to 6, that's what we recommend, but at least 3. Okay, and which should these 3 audiences be? So let's jump directly to the audience part here. So you can find it easily here. So within advertise, you find audiences. Okay, the asset library here you find the audiences, and what they recommend, once again, rather broad audiences. So let's just jump right into it, and let's create 3 of these recommended audiences together. So when it comes to broad audiences, of course, we're talking about the saved audience, and let's call this number 1 English, well, number 1 worldwide. Well, probably let's make this here in Spain, okay, to make it easier. Spain, and well, let's create the name after we have applied the filters, okay? So 27 million people. Maybe we don't want everyone in this location, but we only want people who live in this location, because otherwise you would also impact people who just passed by and people who are traveling here. So we only take people who actually live in Spain, and we said we want to make this a rather broad audience. Okay, Spain, broad, where we only filter, for example, for demographics. We sell jewelry for women, for example, and we know that people typically are women who purchase these products. And we also said here in Spain, our goal should be to aim for an audience somewhere between 1 and 2 million. So let's take this, for example, 1.9 million, which is a pretty decent audience, and let's label that properly, 30 to 35, only women. And a little hack that I typically do when I create my saved audiences, I also give them here in the title the actual audience size, because when you later on apply also here some lookalike audience and custom audiences, so some personalized data, then this potential reach will not show up anymore. Therefore, it's a good idea and helps you to better orientate if you include it already in the title. Okay, so that's a good one to getting started. The first one we said should be a very broad one. The second one, according to the Facebook headquarters, should be an interest-based one, okay? And now we could easily create a new one, but I want to show you also how you can faster perform here, and we could duplicate this one, and then duplicate, just change a little bit of the interest. But where can we duplicate, right? So there is no actual button to duplicate, but I show you a little hack. Of course, you cannot duplicate, but you can edit the existing one. You edit it, you do your changes, for example, let's say both genders, and then you save it as a new one, okay? So instead of updating the original one, you save it as a new one, and by saving it as a new one, you generate a second one, and the second one can be the duplicate with just little changes. For example, we say, now we want to apply some interests. We still only focus on women, we said, but now it can be a little bit broader, because we are going to apply some interests. Let's say we also now only want to take people in cities, the bigger ones, okay, one like this, okay? So 3.3 million, we said we want to be a little bit more specific. Now we apply some interests. So people are interested in jewelry, for example. Jewelry, okay, not that bad. We can also apply a different one. So these are so-called or conditions. So for example, if they're interested in jewelry or in Michael Kors, so this of course makes it not smaller but rather bigger. Let's say they're also interested in Gucci, employees of Gucci, I don't know, but let's say interested, or let's say fashion. Fashion is a big one. Employees not, but interest. You see, like here you see if it's the what kind of filter is it, and we say interests. Okay, we're getting bigger, 1.6, now we're at 2, and these are or conditions, because the person who falls into this category has to fulfill either this or that kind of targeting, okay? Now, if we want to narrow down the audience size, we have to apply so-called and conditions, okay? With and conditions, the person has to fulfill these categories and another one. For example, the person has to have, let me show you a good one. Where's it here? Purchase behavior, okay? People who are engaged shoppers. So engaged shoppers are basically people who have clicked on the call to action button shop now in the past week, so in the last 7 days. And this is of course a good indicator that they're going to purchase online again. This leaves us with a small audience here. Let's make this also, well, let's also include men, just to make it easier here. And to go bigger, we can also say not just cities, but include all areas. Now we're in Spain with 1.5 million people. And of course we have to adopt here the labeling, 20 to 35. That's not both, but now they're interested in, what do we say, fashion and jewelry. Jewelry, how do you spell it? Jewelry, plus, because that's now an and condition, engaged shoppers, and the audience size is 1.5 million. Okay, now very important, we are not going to click update, because if you click update, it's going to overwrite the other one, so we rather save it as a new one, save as new. And the best thing, now we have duplicated the first one and have 2 of them. So as I said, the Facebook headquarters recommends us to have at least 3 different audience types, okay? And we already have 2, a broad one and an interest-based one. And the third one, of course, is a lookalike audience, okay? And when it comes to lookalike audiences, what they recommend nowadays is to focus mainly on lookalike audiences based directly on your pixel source code, okay? So here, this one, for example, pixel of Ads Accelerator, if you take this one, why is it such a good idea? Because it also uses the events with value to create better lookalikes. So the lookalike audience will not only be similar to people who have purchased already, but actually to the high value purchasers, which is a very good idea. And you cannot only do it with the people who have purchased, but you can also with other events, for example, add to cart, initiate checkout, view content, so on and so forth. Now, this is of course just a test account, and therefore I don't have any events on the pixel, but very good to know for you is that they stop taking in consideration 180 days, which used to be state of the art, to work with 6 months look back window. And nowadays, what Facebook recommends is to work with these very short and very recent data sets of maximum 60 days. And of course, this brings you sometimes in trouble, because imagine that you want to work with the lookalike from your purchasers, but in the last 60 days, you have only gained 50 unique purchasers, right? And you need here, important as a minimum number, you need at least 100 unique customers in the last 60 days in order to create this lookalike. But that's an easy fix. You can simply select here, instead of purchasers, you go 1 or 2 steps higher. Typically you have 4 times more add to carts than purchasers, because the average ratio of people who add to cart to purchase is like 23%. So you could say that 1 out of 4 people who add to the shopping cart end up purchasing. Therefore, if you have 50 unique customers that purchased, you're going to have around 200 add to carts. So if you select here the add to cart, for example, you're gonna be you can be very sure that you have sufficient data here. And now, of course, when we're working with CBOs, once again, I remind you, we want to work with rather broad audiences. So if we select only Spain here, for example, of course, Spain has 27 million total potential reach. Therefore, the 10% lookalike in Spain is only 2.7 million, because the lookalike is always the percentage of the overall market size, so of the monthly active users of Facebook in this specific country. So the 10% lookalike in Spain is always 2.7 million. The 1% is of course 270,000. And the 5% is like 1.35 or 1.4 million, because it's just half of this one. And this is in order to really apply a good lookalike only in Spain, we would love to work with the 1%, right? We would really love to take only people who are the most similar to my best customers or to my add to carts. But then with 270,000 people, it's so narrow that the CBO campaign is not going to work. Therefore, in Spain, I rather recommend to work with the 4 or 5%. Actually, what I would do is I would work with the 4% because it's very narrow and very narrow. It's still very, very close to my best customers, and it gives me at least more than 1 million people. But I would actually overcome this issue with another trick, and the trick is multi-country lookalike audiences. Okay, so remember that you can always multiply by 10 this number here if you're on the 10% to get the potential reach of the entire region. And now let's include several additional countries like Italy, France, Germany and Austria. Now, of course, the 10% is going to be significantly higher. I mean, you remember that all of these countries together were 140 million potential reach, therefore the 10% is 14 million. And if I include several countries, I can easily go down to the 1% lookalike, and it's gonna be super specific, super relevant, but more than 1 million people. But as we said in the beginning, if we work with several countries, with bigger regions, we don't have to focus on audiences that are always lower than 2 million. We can also easily take, for example, the 2% or 3%, as long we're not passing the 4 million. So this one's a little bit broad. So in this specific case, I would rather take the 2%, which is going to perform very well if we have sufficient data points here in the nucleus, here in the seed of the lookalike audience, to give Facebook sufficient data to create a very well crafted lookalike. Now, let's sum up. What have we discussed in this video? In this video, I've shown you what are the actual recommendations of the Facebook headquarters nowadays in order to create highly performing CBO campaigns when it comes to their audiences. What we have seen is that we should always have at least 10 euro daily budget per each ad set that we're going to include in this CBO campaign. And we've also seen that we want to test between 3 and 6 different audiences. Therefore, we want to have between 3 to 6 different ad sets, which gives us a daily budget of around 60 euros. If we work with this daily budget of 60 euros, in Spain, for example, a rather small market, we want to make sure that our audience size, our potential reach, is at least 1 million or up to 2 million people. So here we're a little bit too broad. Let's go down like this. It's 2.1. Let's go a little bit lower. So like this. Yeah, 1.8. Amazing. And if we work now with bigger countries or regions, for example, the United States, or if we take several countries in Europe, we can afford easily a potential reach of up to 4 million people. So let's say Germany, and also France and the others, you know the process. We can easily afford up to 4 million. Therefore, we can apply some filters like this. Let's make this only men. So 3 million or even 4 million if we go a little bit broader. Yeah, it's all good. I've also shown you some advanced tricks on how you can only reach people with high purchasing power. We have seen that in the US, there is the actual filter for people with high financial income. So based on the household income of the city codes of the postal codes where they live. If you do this outside of the United States, you can do this on a specific level by working with these pins. For example, you can drop a pin only in the rich area of Barcelona, if you want to do that. However, if you work with several countries, working with these pins is going to drive you crazy because you have to apply so many of them. So rather just select, for example, here only city areas. Within the cities, you can also select only the bigger ones. For example, in Germany, this would give you Berlin, Brandenburg, Hamburg, Munich, and Cologne. And additional filters that will help you to reach only people with high purchase power could also be their educational level. And another hack that I've shown you here is that we focus sometimes, especially when we work with worldwide audiences. So instead of selecting here specific countries, but you rather work with literally worldwide targeting. So every country in this planet, is that you only select people that work on that access Facebook and Instagram from an iOS device, so not Android. And here you can also select people when they're connected to Wi-Fi if you want to, but it's more when it comes to the real high ticket purchase, but just for lead generation, it's not necessary. Moreover, I've also shown you the 3 types of audiences that the Facebook headquarters right now recommends when it comes to CBO testing. So first, they recommend to work with rather broad audiences. So really just apply demographic filters like age and gender. Then the second one is based on interests, so really apply very broad audiences like fashion, jewelry, and always try to stay within this potential reach. And last but not least, I've also shown you the third type of audience that they recommend when it comes to testing, which is a lookalike audience. A lookalike audience in the best case scenario based on your pixel, on the most recent data of the last 60 days. And in order to work with the 1% or 2%, you want to apply several countries together. So you want to make this a multi-country lookalike audience and not just a single country lookalike, because it will easily allow you to work with the 1 or 2% by giving it simply a much bigger potential reach in total, in this case, for example, already 100 million, and therefore the algorithm can really show his magic by working with very broad audiences. Now, I really hope you liked this video as much as I did, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next one. All the best, take care. If you like what you have just seen and you want to learn more about advanced Facebook and Instagram ads, then start following us on all of these different channels, on all of these different platforms. And also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you've really liked this specific video, please just drop us a like and a comment below the video, and looking forward to seeing you in the next ones.